Battle Cats is a broken game. A beautifully broken game. This game is full of both extremely overpowered units, absolutely useless ones, and everything in between. Some cats are basically mandatory, while others might be more useful as user rank farms. This means that some units are used much more than others, much more. But this raises the question, should Battle Cats have balance changes? Now, something I should mention before I begin is that Battle Cats to an extent already has balance changes, for cats at least. True forms, talents, and now ultra forms are ways of buffing a unit. You can also indirectly buff or nerf a unit by adding enemy units to counter that unit, like what they tried to do with Courier Cat. These all have flaws though. Adding a broken true or ultra form to a useless unit can completely change the way you use their unit, which can sort of take away sort of a unique aspect of that cat unit. For example, what if a unit's role was to be a niche spammable unit, but its true form makes it a nuker? Well, now it's strong as a nuker, but originally it was supposed to be a spammable unit, so it's lost what it originally was meant to do. And what if that true form isn't good enough? What if there's a stronger, better nuker that just simply outclasses it in every way? Then it's lost its little niche, and it's lost its new niche. It's trying to be two things, and it's not good at either of them. As for making enemy units that counter it, let's look at Courier Cat to see how this has gone wrong. Courier is such a broken unit that opponents made the units that he counters behemoths overpowered. But this just caused all other anti-behemoth units to become extremely ineffective, and thus forced most players to mostly just use Courier Cat, because it's the only cat that's kind of viable versus these enemies. These all could be potentially solved by balance changes. Balance changes are conceptually interesting. To explain this, let's look at games that require balance changes. I'll use a game that I play quite often as an example, Valorant. Every update, Valorant buffs some agents and nerfs some agents, making some better and some worse. Changing the meta means that there's not just the same broken agents which are dominating the meta. Nerfing some agents means that players will get out of their comfort zone and try other agents, making players experience more of the game. You can't always just stick to the same agents, as some agents, especially with map rotations, because some agents are better on certain maps, will get buffed and nerfed. And I'd say that the vast majority of players in Valorant would agree that balance changes make the game better. But there is a major difference between Battle Cats and Valorant. And it's not, Valorant being a gun game, whatever. No, it's that Battle Cats is a single player game. Valorant has to buff and nerf agents so that players will not get frustrated with the same agents dominating the meta and others being left in the dust. No one wants to use an agent that's going to be useless until the end of time, and nobody wants to get dominated by the same agent every single game. It gets boring having the same characters be strong in the meta and having the same ones being underpowered. But Battle Cats doesn't have to deal with that. You're only playing against levels, not other players. No matter how and what you play, it'll have no effect on other players. So even if you use the most broken, overpowered, busted unit ever to exist, it would have absolutely no effect on the other player. If you use the most disgusting, useless, unusable unit, it will have no effect. Let's look at some good things. Balance changes in Battle Cats can make Battle Cats more usable, and good cats less usable, creating a more diverse meta. People who watch my video constantly know I rely on Dark Casly real bad. If opponents nerfed her, I'd be unfortunately motivated to use another broken cat, which could give me an excuse to use worse units that I didn't use before, like Shishilan Pasalan. And that's the other side, you can make weaker units good. So underpowered units or those that are simply outclassed by others have a chance to be used. I'll use like every single spammable attacker that is outclassed by Kazajuzu and Courier as an example. You can buff them and make them much more viable in the meta. This would be even more effective if, let's say, Kazajuzu or Courier Cat was nerfed. You can use their stats, add a new ability, and yeah, they can compete in the new meta again. There are probably so many more examples, just because there are hundreds of units that need balancing, either to get better or to get worse. You can consistently change the meta of the game, making bad units good and good units bad, meaning that lineups can consistently change. If a player wants to be effective, they have to adapt to be using new units, really allowing the game to theoretically motivate a player to have to use every single unit in that game. Changing the meta constantly can potentially make a game feel new and refreshing, as you're not using the same units over and over again. Both the complete beginner and the experienced veteran will have to adapt to be using different units. It also makes enemies more exciting. We all know how floating enemies are power creep to the ground, so balance changes can make that relevant again. By nerfing cats that counter them, like anti-floating cats, you can make floating enemies feel scary again, make them feel like more of a threat than they are now. Like my example earlier with Courier, Colossus enemies were power creep just because of him, so nerfing him while buffing other cats can mix up the meta a bit. Now, what are some bad things about balance changes? Well, you can alienate long-time players. A great thing about mobile single-player games is consistency. You leave the game for a while and come back, and it's the same game you remember. Imagine coming back to the game and all the units you see are completely different. It makes the OG player just maybe just put down the game again rather than tediously learn all the new balance changes that have popped up. It also might make the meta too fluid. While changing the meta can be a good thing, constantly changing the meta can make it hard for players to keep up. Constant adjustments might mean that players need to frequently adapt their strategies, which can be very frustrating and make the game feel unstable. And probably the most important thing is disruption to gacha and player strategies. You could have saved up a lot of cat food to roll for a certain unit, and if you're lucky enough to roll them, you probably spend a lot of time grinding for XP to upgrade them, and grinding for their true form if they have one, and then grinding for their talents. Is just a very tedious cycle to get that unit to be as busted as possible. For example, Greater Balrog Cat, he's not that good just in his evolved form. You need his true form, you need his talents, you need to buff him, you need to boost him, you need to do all this stuff to make him broken. And what if he just gets nerfed? Well, then all that time and effort you use would go to waste. Imagine you spent all that time and just Ponos just nerfed him to the ground. Feel like you wasted all those items and resources for nothing, and the cycle starts again. You'll have to find another broken unit to invest resources in. Or look at the other side. Imagine you sold the unit because it was useless, and then Ponos busts him so badly that it becomes broken. Well, you'll probably feel regret, and this will probably make players keep every single unit, but still, it's not a good feeling if you invested resources in the wrong unit. Balance changes have the potential to be very frustrating, especially in Battle Cats where grinding is a huge part of the game. Grinding and not having that potential payoff can be devastating and demotivating to a certain extent. Some players might not even put in the work because, oh, this unit will get nerfed to the ground. What's the point in grinding for it? And then there's the gacha aspect. Gacha plays a huge role in this game, rolling for certain units, getting excited, rolling certain banners to get these broken units. What if Ponos just nerfs those units? Now there's no point in like rolling for them because you don't know if they're going to be good in a few months. If all the units are balanced, what's the point of rolling different banners since they're all going to be, you know, relatively the same? I mean, yeah, they'll probably be different niches, blah blah blah, but still it'll be less exciting than it is now, where you roll the almighties to get the most broken Ubers in the game, or Uberfest and Epic Fest, which are even better examples to get those extremely broken Ubers. Now before we get to my final thoughts, let's see what the community, aka Reddit, had to say. They can't because it's a gacha game and Japan rules don't allow these types of things to avoid more gambling and scummy practices. So it might not even be allowed to have balance changes. It might not even be legal, so that's pretty cool. In my opinion, yes. There are some units that have been extremely broken, while there are other units that are considered extremely weak. For example, Thief Cat. With all due respects to talents and forms that mostly provide extra abilities, a more stable way to balance unit would be through balance changes when needed. I don't expect the game to have too many balance changes overall, considering it's not a competitive game, so there's no problem with some units being a bit weaker or a bit stronger, but there are some units that really need help or really need nerfs. Buff Camclat, give it 1 knockback please. What is Camclat? Also, 1 knockback. What does he mean? Not 1 knockback. If you don't have 1 knockback, that means you have infinite HP. Wait, no. Give it 1 knock. Oh wait. If you want to enjoy more quality content like this, be sure to like, subscribe, and leave your own ideas in the comments below. Oh, go from 2 knockbacks to 1 knockback. Wait, I'm so stupid. Okay, never mind. No, it would destroy the game, and also every single ranking video, etc. Sure, stuff like Courier and Dark Casly and whatnot might need balancing, but this is still a single player game, so just don't use them if you don't like them. That's an interesting point. You don't have to use a broken unit if you don't like them. Now here's a very long-winded and a very detailed answer. One problem with doing balance changes is that the gacha units that could potentially be gone through money. Someone who paid for Dazzling might feel scammed if she suddenly got, say, a 20% damage nerf. Talents, ultra talents, and ultra forms can bypass this issue since they are optional purchasable add-ons. As for the non-gacha units, not many of them are strong enough to deserve nerfs. Courier, Rock, and Esoteric Uro are some of the bigger ones, but Courier's main problem is his early availability rather than strength of the unit as a whole. Talented Can is a better unit, but requires more game progress and notable investment. Rock isn't a really hard carry unit, just a meat shield, and Esoteric Uro at least requires speeding some difficult late game stages to unlock. Plenty of non-gacha can get buffs. In many cases they'll be accomplished with true forms and talents. The special cans are examples of underpowered units receiving help. True forms are basically very exciting buffs that also come with a goofy or cool new form. Finally, the Battle Cats is a single player game. Not every unit has to be viable. You aren't at a disadvantage relative to other players outside of rare cases like Dojo and the non-existent Labyrinth. Most of the basic cats fall off later on, but they did their job as starter units. Being the first CC unit you get via story, he should be weaker than Pirate, who has to be drawn from the gacha, and he can serve the purpose of getting past Red Cyclone if he's your only option. There are also thousands of stages. Nerfing a meta unit might seem like a good idea, but what if it makes a stage nearly impossible without a specific Uber or 50 plus 30 unit? I don't necessarily hate the idea of balance changes, but I also don't think that they are necessary, and there'll be several challenges required to implement them. Thank you, Halucha9, for your very detailed response. Now for my personal opinion. My final thoughts. Should Battle Cats add balance changes? In my opinion, no. I feel like balance changes can definitely have positive effects. Positive effects such as shaking up the meta and making people use new units. And Courier Cat, once again, is a great example of a cat that if it was nerfed would probably be better for the game. I think most people would agree with that. At the same time though, it is a single player game. Nerfing a unit can only hurt the player because it's not like the players are playing other players. Nerfing Courier would only make the individual player change his game style rather than changing the way players would interact with each other. It would only make the solo player change his game style, and he/she might not even do that. Like, imagine you nerf a unit, but since the player is so comfortable with the unit, or just doesn't check the balance changes, which you know is pretty reasonable, that he or she just keep using it. Let's be clear. Battle Cats is not a highly competitive game like Valorant, and thank goodness it isn't. It is never advertised as a perfect or even well-balanced game. We all know it's not. It's just a fun, casual pocket game that you play when you're bored. Nothing more, nothing less. It doesn't have to be perfectly balanced. It's just a game where you try cool, broken units against strange enemies. And yes, while I wish more units were relevant, you gotta take the good with the bad. And don't forget about the gacha. Gacha aspect plays a huge role in that. Imagine rolling an amazing unit just for you to think this unit's getting nerfed soon. It kind of takes away some of the fun of gacha, because who doesn't want to get excited rolling an obscenely broken unit? You can grind so long to get rare tickets for that specific unit, grind for NP, XP, whatever, to invest in that unit. To me, balance changes just don't feel right. I feel like it doesn't really fit into the game like other games. People don't come and stay for this game because it's perfectly balanced. They come for a fun game, not a balanced one. I feel like if this game was completely balanced, it would be a little boring. Like, who wants to roll an 11 draw just to get a unit that is just as good as the next one? Overall, I feel like balance changes wouldn't be awful. They're just not necessary or even wanted. If I were to wake up and my precious Dark Castle wasn't broken anymore, I'd feel a little less motivated to grind. Honestly, what they do now by adding talents and true forms is pretty good. It's a form of indirect balance changes that gives a lot of units second chances, while still not directly buffing or nerfing a unit. That means that a unit can only get better, even if slight, not worse. But yeah, while balance changes are not an awful idea, I feel like developers' times can be used in better aspects, such as creating better player versus player interactions to make, like, maybe a trading system, better cat claw dojo design, or even multiplayer mode. I suppose if they did add multiplayer modes, we would need balance changes. Just to finish things off, I don't think Battle Cats should have balance changes. Battle Cats is a beautifully broken game, and let's keep it that way. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm tired again. I haven't made a video in a while. The channel hasn't been doing well recently, and it's kind of demotivated me to make videos, but here I am again. Again, the Bloons TD video didn't do very well, so unfortunate, but we'll move on. Thank you for watching this far in the video. You're really supporting out this small little channel, and if you enjoyed, leave a like or a comment and maybe even subscribe. Other than that, I don't know what plans I have for the future of this channel. I don't know if I plan expanding more on Battle Cats or not, but whatever it is, I hope you'll be there for the ride. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.